Today we have former Commonwealth guest Paul Jarrett. Paul is the CEO of Bulu, which is a company that makes subscription boxes for big brands like Clorox and Crayola and BuzzFeed. I used to work for Bulu, and one of the first episodes of the Commonwealth, we had Paul and his wife Stephanie on. Paul, thanks for coming back on the show.
Thanks for having me on, man. And I'm very jealous of your beautiful hair. We're like the opposites.
Yeah,
Your
yes.
hair is brown on my beard.
Yeah,
So
I'm, I'm
looking
doubling.
good.
Thank you, thank you. I'm doubling down on the long hair growth, and we'll get it cut
Yeah.
when this like whole mess winds down. um,
You might have really long hair by the
yeah,
time that happens.
yeah. It'll be to my ass by the end of this.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, of course. So when I was like approaching what to talk to you about, I so some companies, it seems very polarized. Like some companies are affected by this pandemic greatly, and
Yeah.
others, yeah, others like Clorox are like doing are hitting like record sales numbers, and with
Right.
yeah, and with Bulu like shipping product that could be good for them, but on the other hand, like some of the boxes are like
Right.
expendable. So how has the pandemic changed the like Bulu business model?
Yeah. Well, I think it changed for us overnight.
Yeah.
um, so I would say that, the good news is that we're in e-commerce, we're in digital commerce, and that's a good place to be. The bad news is that, a lot of our partners are retail companies that a significant portion of their revenue comes from retail foot traffic, right? 80% of all sales still happen in stores versus 20% online. And, that 80% dwindled down to, I think, like 30%. So that's super significant. And then, on the plus side, it hasn't, the pandemic hasn't slapped Nebraska in the face like it has other states. And then, on the negative side, we do have some essential goods, but we do have some stuff that isn't necessarily essential. So I think that for us, we had been tinkering towards the end of this year, or I'm sorry, towards the end of 2019. We were actually working on a software. We had some extra time, extra capital. We kind of had our business model really down pat. The challenge was, as you experience, like, landing big clients and getting them going takes a ridiculous amount of time. So, it took 2 years to get Crayola up and running. We have Hasbro and Clorox that, we get paid with and we're working with, but like it takes a significant amount of time to put that up. So we thought, how can we do some, software or additional services that creates more revenue? We had a pretty damn cool app and concept and everything. We went through 5 or 6 different ideas. I put in hundreds of phone calls. And I think almost the 3 days before we had like the app interface and what it was supposed to do and all that stuff. And bam, this stuff hit. Completely made the app irrelevant. So maybe that's a blessing in disguise. But one of the things that we found in our phone calls with all these companies is that they really needed e-commerce support. And so because we had did that, we learned that, a lot of like custom fulfillment, small fulfillment, just managing stuff on Amazon, managing customer service for e-commerce. There was a huge gap in the market for that. And so although we didn't want to go that route, again, the market told us to with the pandemic. So we had always built out all of our marketing message and everything with the word like subscription box. So private label subscription box programs. And we always thought that we had dropped the word box. So then it would just be private label subscription program, like support. But really what's ended up happening is, I think, and this really seems to be relevant, is that we're just going to be private label e-commerce services. So whether you need customer service, fulfillment, website build, pretty much everything except for paid marketing, we're going to support those things. So again, not necessarily what we wanted or had the vision. There's always a big difference between what you want to do and what the market wants. And that is incredibly hard to separate that from. So I think, overnight, whether it was universities or high schools winning like a graduation kit or learning at home kits, boy, it's like the number of coffee subscription box and marijuana subscription box overnight turned into mask and sanitizer boxes. That's the number one call. And so we're fielding any and everything because, we have been impacted. We have lost a significant amount of revenue. And so how do we backfill that? How do we take advantage of all that? And, we'll see.
Yeah.
Sorry, I have a baby crying in the background, like most people do. I got a dog licking its butt right here,
yeah,
right over here. I got a baby crying, so we're in it, baby.
Yeah, yes. Have you seen those how late night TV's like adapted that it's like the Jimmy Fallon's kid does the intro, like it's like all like hand drawn and stuff.
I've seen a little bit of it. I didn't like it at first, and then like I don't know, like the John Oliver stuff is like usually what I watch, and I'm almost like just throw a laugh track in there for my stupid ass because I'm picking up on some.
Yeah. Yes. So I assume Bulu's completely remote, like The Office has gone remote.
Yeah. We went remote earlier, and we got a little bit of flack for it.
Yeah. How did you make those big changes that you just spoke to with the company 100% remote? Was that challenging?
Executionally, not. I think emotionally, it's taking its toll on people. March 12th, I'll forever remember. I think it was March 12th, but we were watching actually our nephew Noah Vedral. He's plays backup quarterback at University of Nebraska, and then decided to play basketball for Nebraska. And so we were watching him. He got in the game, and we were watching him, and we were also watching the coach. The coach literally, like, physically went down with the flu. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, I was watching the game.
And then they quarantined everybody after the game, and I'm texting with him. And he's like, "Yeah, I don't know what's going on." And I'm like, "Bro, you're being quarantined." And he's like, "What?" Like, it was pretty crazy. And that was the moment where, like, it wasn't even an option to me. I kind of like looked over at Stephanie, and I was like, yeah, we should call everybody right now and have them go remote. And the only thing we changed was like, well, let's have them come into the office so that we can tell everybody face to face. And we told them, and I'd say, half the group was like, awesome, thank you. We actually had one or two people already that started working remote. They asked to, and I even thought it was a little excessive, but I wanted to be respectful of it. And then, 2 days later, we were telling everybody, and half the group was like, are you kidding me? And the other half was like, thank you very much. And, we're already, we're the company where you'll sit next to somebody and Slack them, even though you're sitting right next to them. Right?
Yeah.
So executionally, it was fine, but you can see and feel people are, they're kind of going a little bit bananas. The warehouse was the really stressful and continues to be like probably the really stressful thing to figure out for sure.
Yeah, and I'm sure that like operating a warehouse, there's like CDC guidelines you have to comply with. How has that gone, and how are you even staying updated with them? Because it seems like everything, like something new is happening every day. That I'm sure, especially in that world, it's the same.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever read I would consider myself a reader or audiobooker. Like I've almost switched exclusively to audiobooks and podcasts because you can speed things up, right? Downloaded what's it called? Downloaded an app that basically reads PDFs and stuff for you. So I'm up till 3-4 in the morning. It's like I work during the day, and then the kids go to bed at 9:30, and then I'm up almost consistently till like 4 a.m. just reading and writing down notes. And I'll say that 90% of them are worthless, right? At the time they seem important, then you sleep and you wake up and you're like, that's not important at all.
Yeah.
And then, really just like hitting up our lawyers, accountants, other people and saying like, hey, I caught this. Is this what this means? Does this make sense? Um, and you know, Google alerts. I mean, you're just any and everything you're absorbing. I'll say probably the most worthless thing that I've wasted way too much time doing are like these group conference calls. You know, like God bless our accountants and everybody, but like if you're really reading stuff in real time and then you hop on a call and then somebody's like, let's talk about this PPP SBA thing, and you're like, yo, that was like a week ago, and everybody on this call should have read that. We shouldn't wait for a call to read it. So those things have been painfully time consuming and worthless. But I'd say like it's a lot of Google alerts, shit, sprint, read it, call whoever. Our team's been fantastic. Our lawyers and accounting team of just like taking my calls 24/7. Probably just as far as passwords and information and PIN numbers, like way too many people have those, but it's a mad dash, and it is pulling every favor, every lever. I mean, I had to like text the CEO of a bank that we don't even use asking for favors, right? Just to like, get stuff submitted. So yeah, that was probably the first 2.5 weeks. And I'd probably say there was 4 of us that were solely committed to that and just texting 24/7 saying, did you read this? Did you read this?
Yeah. Have you gotten any of that loan or grant money yet from the
got it, baby. Yeah.
You did?
Yeah,
okay.
We got it.
And how valuable was that to like keep the operation going?
Huge. Yeah. Huge. It has allowed us to, I want to be careful because I don't know what I can share. Well, I don't really care, but I believe we got in the neighborhood of like $500,000 to cover payroll. And that'll last us like a couple of months. And that money was lost due to coronavirus and our partners saying, hey, look, we're not going to ship, or their warehouses are shut down. Or whatever. So it's cool that like something that happened to us and we went from shit, how do we cut? How do we do whatever? And you're just like, are you kidding me? Like, is this even worth it? Right. I mean, it's been a real roller coaster, and then you go, well, are we really going to bank, a couple of weeks on getting this federal thing that changes every 5 minutes? And we took the risk, and it's been very appreciated, right? It's like, it's cool because it's working exactly how it should work, right?
Yeah, interesting. And how have you communicated all of like how you're moving forward? Like at the beginning, you like laid out what the new plan is. How have you even communicated that to your team with everyone in different places? Like, has that been challenging, or is it just a simple Zoom call?
No, I really struggle with that because, we didn't really say, here's the new vision, here's the new, like, all right, everybody listen up, here's what we're going to do. We didn't do that. I would say that we were and continue to be painfully transparent, open and honest. People can text me from our company or our partners 24/7, 365. I get back almost immediately. But I struggle with that because when this first started going down, everything that was sent to me, everything that you read, everything that advisors, mentors, investors, everybody was like, all right, in a standard recession, you cut 33%. You need to turn into a general, and you basically like, crack the whip on people, and you say, we're cutting everybody's salary 33%. We're cutting staff 30%, like cut. And being that, I have a little bit of experience, and I've not been through anything like this, but I've been through the kind of like panic mode, right? Like, and what's interesting is like really experienced people will still go into panic mode. And, I just looked at it and I thought, if this was me, we've been running our company for 8 years. And I thought, if this was me in the first 4 to 5 years of the business, for sure, the first year or two, I would definitely do exactly that. Right. And I thought, figure out financially where we're at, figure out what's happening. We're almost updating our business model and our financials hourly now. And, you know, you don't have to do anything right now, right? And so, you know, what I have seen is a lot of people that are leading companies, they're either going into full cutting mode, or they're pretending like this isn't happening, or they're just like acting like they're screwed, everything's over, or like whatever, right? And so I always think of like, if over here we have cut, and over here we have do nothing, where in the middle do we live in reality? Like it's the whole, like, is that the truth, or is that what we're telling ourselves? And it's really easy to like execute what the world tells you or what investors or advisors tell you, but like having those clarity moments and sitting back and thinking like, okay, like what really truly is the wisest thing to do, and frankly like arguing with a lot of people what is and isn't, you know, that it's, you know, knock on wood, literally knock on wood, that's working out well for us. But my biggest fear is probably that either our employees, investors, advisors, whoever, look at my actions and go, oh, he's not doing anything, right? Or, you know, they misinterpret the leadership style, because everything that people are comparing this to is irrelevant. Like, you know, yeah, this is a recession, but like it's wrapped up in a fucking pandemic, right? Hopefully I can cuss.
Yeah, no, you're fine.
Like there's no fucking playbook for a pandemic, right? So like, for businesses, right? Mm-hmm. For most, maybe. I mean, I haven't seen the e-commerce pandemic playbook.
Yeah.
And so I think it's irresponsible to jump to a strategy and playbook that's irrelevant for this scenario, right? And so I'm really pleased with, I feel like our employees, co-workers were hopefully, and it feels like they were really patient, and they weren't, you know, there's the moments where people were panicking a little bit or freaking out, but like it was probably about 2 to 3 weeks before we really sat down and went like, okay, here's what we're going to do. Here's the situation. Yes, we have looked at cuts. Yes, we have looked at it. Ultimately, nothing changes. We're still going to give raises. We're going to do everything that we can to, you know, support everybody. And, you know, we just actually looked at the new numbers and projections last night. We got a call with some financial people in a couple hours, and, you know, again, knock on wood, but, you know, everything's, it doesn't look as bleak as it did a while ago. So I'm really pleased with it. And I feel like when it's all said and done, you know, I was joking with somebody and I said, if there's like a business pandemic strategy award, we better fucking win first place, because I feel like we're maneuvering this incredibly well. Not to sound arrogant, but, you know, the reason for that is because like we've been through so much shit. Like our business should not exist. Like from raising capital to pivoting to everything. You know, if there's ever a story or a book written about it, it'll be like, you know, Too Dumb to Fail, right? Yeah. Like that'll be the book, right? Mm-hmm. And so having been through all that, I think entrepreneurs who have suffered through the 18-month death valley, entrepreneurs that have lived longer than, you know, a handful of years, I think they're uniquely qualified for this. I got to share one quick thing, which I thought was like super interesting and comforting. But I was talking with an entrepreneur, and we're just nonchalantly talking about everything like death and, you know, finances and whatever. And I at the end of the call, I said, hey man, I really appreciate this. It feels like, I don't know, I was able to just openly talk to you about a lot of important things. And, you know, even my co-founder and our team, like, you know, they get a little bit upset or frustrated. And he started laughing and he said, do you feel more comfortable in a pandemic? And I said, oh God, that's a great question. I hate to say it, but I think I do. And he started laughing and he goes, me too. I've talked to a couple of other entrepreneurs, and they're almost like, yes, like chaos, like we know, like it feels more normal, like your back's against the wall, like bullets are flying, people are dying, like you're back in the trenches, right? And you're like, fuck, I know what to do here. You know what I mean? And a lot of the entrepreneurs that I'm talking to, like they went through a really rough time, and now they're running like a successful company, and it's almost like you yearn for that chaos or whatever. And I'm like, what is that? That's like sadistic, like sadomasochist stuff. And I think that has translated into like the whole, like, we're not going to freak out and cut 33%. We're not going to like freak out and go into like, everybody listen to me, here's what we're doing. Like, it's like this weird, like, oh, this actually over an 8-year span, this actually feels a little bit more comfortable than it should. So I don't know what that is. It's, it's probably inappropriate or not the right way to do it, but it's the truth. And it was cool to hear like somebody else say that, because I was like kind of living inside myself going like, like I'm shockingly okay with this. What is that,
Yeah. And interesting that the just like level of chaos entrepreneurs are used to experiencing, and like that chaos is now like expanded to everyone. So that's an interesting perspective.
And like, don't get me wrong, and like, that I enjoy it or whatever. It's like I'm saying like I feel comfortable. I would say if there wasn't like death involved, like I would really be okay with it. But like that's the stuff that I don't know. It's like, oh, the monkey's back on my shoulders. Okay, like I know what that feels like. I feel comfortable with that.
Yeah. So I am going to switch gears to a different, like slightly more personal podcast. But before doing that, if you're listening and would like to get notified about the next conversation we release, you can text the word "common" to 31996, and we'll shoot you the link as soon as that drops. That's COMMON to 31996. And so, Paul, you during this pandemic, you're launching your own podcast.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
So
that's the second podcast you worked on. The first one was like an Apple top of the charts for entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
This one is not as entrepreneurship, but what's the show about?
So the podcast, well, thank you for bringing it up. The podcast is called Fail Disclosure. It's a play on full disclosure. And if anybody's ever seen or I guess listened to the podcast Beautiful Anonymous, it's very similar structure. I'm a huge fan of Beautiful Anonymous. I've had this, idea. It's kind of like a ripped version of Beautiful Anonymous. I was inspired by Beautiful Anonymous, maybe. But the concept of the show is that running a business and talking to other folks that run a business, there is shit that goes down that you just can't share with anybody for legal reasons, for whatever reason it is. And, these are the things where, the boss has a relationship with somebody, somebody's staying in the office and using the sink to wash themselves. This is the, pot found in the office. These are the crazy things that, nobody can talk about. And when you meet up with other people that are running businesses and you have a few drinks or whatever, sometimes these stories slip out. They will never get out to the normal world. Entrepreneurs, CEOs just will never share these things. And they're always the best stories and they're always the most interesting. So I thought to myself, like, what if we had an anonymous call-in podcast and people would share their epic fails, their epic stories, inappropriate, all the wild stuff at work, and they're protected because no names, locations, or companies are used. Wouldn't that be interesting? And my buddy Clint, who runs a company called Arch Rival, who, I look up to him, he's super smart, super accomplished, all that stuff. He came to me one day and said, hey, I saw your post on LinkedIn about asking, should you start a podcast? I want to do a podcast with you. And I was like, what? Okay. And before he left, I was like, hey, I just want to pitch to you this idea. Anonymous callers talk about HR issues that happen to them at their business. And he freezes and he looks at me and he goes, I love it. which is rare for Clint, and he knows. I would say he's got a pretty good gauge on what's good and what's bad creatively, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, it's kind of like he's like, it's kind of like a business therapy, maybe, and I'm like, yeah, it's almost like cathartic maybe for me, but really it's just like it's this thing that I want it to be a lot of fun and just let people call in and share, because a lot of people want to get this shit off their chest, or if people hear the other stuff that's went down, they're going to feel really comfortable, because, starting a business, like, nobody tells you about what's about to go down, right? And if you hear like, oh, our situation isn't that bad, listen to what happened to this person. So we recorded 2 episodes, and it's doing well. I think we have 343 downloads in less than 2 weeks. 5 stars, 25 reviews, given I'm asking everybody and their mother to, promote it and whatever.
Yeah.
But, we're getting reached out to by some really interesting people. Spotify podcast development person I got connected with. So we'll see. But, it's already like this thing where it went well. First 2 episodes are in the can, and we pushed and it was a really rinky-dink operation to get the first 2 out. And all of a sudden, like, now everybody has an opinion on the music, and they're like, whatever. So that's the stage that we're kind of in right now. But, ultimately, I had a ton of fun doing the Inside Outside podcast. I missed it. I just didn't have the time to do it. And the way that we've set up Fail Disclosure is that it's like 2 hours a month from me. And that's all I do. And I think it's got legs, man. I think it's, if anything, it's probably like a good mental release. I know this. I haven't laughed so hard listening to stories, or just laughed that hard, in a really long time. And the last time that we recorded, which was last week, I left and my face hurt. I was crying. So I'm like, I don't even care at this point if like people listen to it. This is just like healthy for me to do it.
Yeah. And my favorite part is having a platform to express myself creatively, that I can like really think through and like, tell stories. Regardless of what I do after this, whether it's like a full-time job, because this pandemic thing has thrown everything up in the air, I still want that outlet. I listened
100%.
I listened to an episode this morning. It was the one with the girl who was doing marketing for the Nazi. She gets a job, yes, and then like 8 months into the job, she finds out her boss is a Nazi.
Dude. And like and I feel bad because I might know this person, but I'm not figuring out who it is, and I don't care. But like, that like a lot of people, had they taken that job, would be like almost immediately or in the job interview process, like, oh, this dude's like a Nazi. I don't know. But like, the humor to me in that is that it took so long for her to figure out. And she was like, there's a little part where she goes, well, I don't know. I guess like he was wearing like a wooded necklace with like swastikas on it, and that made sense. And I was like, that was the thing. Like that's what took you.
And my takeaway was there's like nuance to hosting or to creating a podcast that like when you listen, I guess frustrates me when I see it not done well, that you guys just knock out of the park. Like even, like even the music, like when I first hit play, the music, it starts out as like elevator music. Then at like 2 seconds, like a beat drops and it's like very like disruptive, which is engaging. And then you and Clint, the intro, it describes the show, but gets to the point very quickly, which the worst is like, 5 minutes in the podcast, the host is still draining on. And then like, Clint's good at asking questions, and you like are just kind of like the like this kind of funny guy in the room, but and the banter between you two is really good. So highly recommended, and I'm looking forward to upcoming episodes. So.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I've joked, but seriously said like oh, I'm like the stoner guy on the couch. Like that's my role. I'm okay with that, right? It's nice not to be in charge of something, but. I would tell people, a lot of that came from, the music. We were spitballing, and I was like, I don't know, like we almost want it, like you walk into HR and they think you're asking about benefits, and then you lay it on them like this terrible thing, and it just like the record scratches and everybody's like, what?
Yeah.
And I'm like, what is that? It's like almost like and I was like, what's HR and like audio? Like it's almost like elevator music, but then like, you know, it's like the Stone Cold thing where like the bottle smashes and it's like da 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 da. I'm like, that's like, I think what I'm trying to describe. And then they just did it, and I was like, oh yeah, that sounds about. I think the music we want to tweak with, but the elevator music, and a lot of, I guess my point is like a lot of the stuff is like the first recommendation. Like we got to the name fail disclosure because I was like, what do you do when you talk to HR? Well, if you're giving them like a full disclosure. So I think that's the cool part, is that like we're kind of like winging it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's working. And then a lot of the structure, I mean, we literally are just listening to podcasts and we're like, oh, I like how this podcast does that. What's our version of that? I like how this does it. So, you know, it's a lot of like copy and paste, I would say, and it's working. And that's the difference, I think, between innovation and invention, right? Like, I think it's really stupid for people to try to invent a new style of something. But I think it's really smart for people to innovate on something. And it's similar to like, you know, Steve Jobs was not an inventor. Like inventors don't really make money or see the success, you know, like Tesla, you know, like was it Nikola Tesla? He was an inventor, right? The innovator, which takes that thing and applies it to something, that's the innovator, right? And so I would say that's what I like about the podcast, like kind of behind the scenes, is like we're not reinventing or inventing anything. We're just innovating on what's already out there. And I say, if you would look at historically me and how our company and everything, how I operate, I really try to do that is innovate, don't invent.
Yeah. All right. Well, Paul, thanks for joining me today. I'm like 15 minutes over my scheduled time, so I'll let you go. But thanks for
Dude, I'm good, man.
Yeah.
If you want to keep rolling, I'm good. If we want to call it, I'm good. You know.
Well, one, I was going to text you after this. Where do you get your intro music?
I have no idea. You can contact. I'll put you in touch with them. AJ.
Okay, Cruz. Yeah.
Grinds. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think they have access to a library. Yeah, I don't. I would say the second part of the music. That's the thing I want to tinker with. You know, I like the elevator music and the crash or whatever, but I don't even know if it's a record scratch or a crash, but he might have made the second part of it. But yeah, we need to work on the second element of the music. It's got to have like that. You know, sticking to the whole innovation. What is it? You know, Freakonomics, where it's like, like it's got that like that's what we need. Like, I feel like the intro, that da, 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 like you remember that, and then the second part, I think the music needs to be a more repeatable beat, because I just view someday we'll be in an auditorium doing it live, and I want the crowd to be able to like, you know, repeat the beat out loud. So.
Okay.
We'll see.
Cool. Yeah. So that's all the questions I had for you. And
cool, man.
The way people listen to podcasts has also changed with the pandemic, and that's why like I'm doing a screen recording video and shit. That and I think the length, because normally we go for like 40 minutes to an hour, but I'm trying to keep it shorter just because I think people's attention spans to like sit and listen to something aren't as high. So.
Yeah, it's funny you said that, because that was our feedback from the podcast, was like, just make it to one call. I want to do it, you know, 10 minutes when I'm doing the dishes in between my kids screaming or whatever. So I think we're going to turn it to one call for every show. And it's going to be anywhere from like 10 minutes to maybe an hour if it's, you know, a good call. But we're trying to do, you know, 10 to 20 minutes. So.
Yeah, sweet. All right. Well, thanks again, Paul.
Dude, great to see you, man.
Yeah.
And that is it for today's episode. Thanks for being a member of the Commonwealth. If you enjoyed this conversation, please tell your friends about us and leave a review. When we release new episodes, we text the link to a few members of the Commonwealth. To get added to the list, text the word COMMON to 31996. Again, that's COMMON to 31996, or use the link in our show notes. Thanks for supporting the show.